Dance of Shared Solitudes. Sit beside me in long moments of shared solitude, knowing both our absolute aloneness and our undeniable belonging. Dance with me in the silence and in the sound of small daily words, holding neither against me at the end of the day. I ache for shared silence, not the awkward lulls in conversation where we reach for something, anything that covered the tension of trying to be with too much of the other and too little of ourselves, but the moments of fullness that let each of us unfold and know who we really are. I long for silences where another is with another, where there is nothing to forgive or explain or justify, where we agree to abandon quickly spoken words for a time so we do not abandon ourselves or each other. The silences where no one asks me to choose between belonging to myself and being with the world. And when the silences come, I feel how I'm working my way home through whatever they hold. Terror or tenderness, grief or celebration, spiraling even closer to a sweetness I've ached for all my life. Natalie, the beautiful 9-year-old daughter of my friend Valerie, is dead. Cancer. 3 of us sit in the church and Natalie stares back at us unafraid from the photo at the front. Everyone wears dark suits or polite dresses and cries quietly or stares stoically ahead as the minister speaks about life continuing. I love words, but I do not want words now. I want silence and keening in the sound of tearing cloth. I pray that the words are offering something to ease the incomprehensible ache that must be in the hearts of Natalie's mother and father and sisters, but I long to be silent together. I stare at my hands clenched in my lap, and I struggle to find a way to breathe and be with these people, my people. We are neither alone with the grief that is tearing us apart, grief for all the children and all the innocence we have lost, nor with each other enough in that grief to risk shared silence. If we could risk such intimacy, surely the collective wail that would carry us across to the other side of this ache would find us and fill us. But we don't know how. I think of my own sons when they were small, of carrying Brennan on one hip, keeping a hand free to pick up clothes and toys as I walked through the house talking to him. And suddenly, as I turned away from the window, I saw our shadowed silhouette on the bedroom wall, mother and child as one whole, of Nathan crawling into my lap whenever I sat down, fitting snugly there and claiming my attention and my heart with his small warm body, no matter how tired or distracted I was. I think of how when they were young, afraid I would forget who I was, I turned for a moment to speak to the world so I could hear the sound of my own voice and know I had not disappeared. And when I turned back to my babies, they were young men walking out the door of their mother's house into the world, as all young men must. This coming together and moving apart is what makes us aware that we are all, each of us, alone. And when I'm fully with myself, it is almost enough. Almost. But when you hold my aloneness and I hold yours, when I know we will not hold the great necessary silences against each other, I'm penetrated by a greater intimacy, an intimacy with the other, the mystery that permeates everything, and penetrates and vibrates my skin, your blood, my bones. It is what makes my breath and your breath the same breath, breathing us all into the next moment. It is here, where my solitude and yours sit side by side, that I know this. Other that is never completely other, that I meet the I that is simply not myself, that I am truly with the world. This is how I want to dance together over and over again, so that even when we're apart, you're both with me and without me, as you were when we sat next to each other. This solitude and merging with each other, that lets us remember the great silence that sustains us, is the home my soul seeks. I have to go there alone. I cannot go there without you. This is the experience of deep contemplation, and even when it is done in physical isolation, in solo time at a hermitage or on a wilderness vision quest, it does not remove us from others, but opens us to a deeper intimacy with both ourselves and the world. When we are profoundly with ourselves, we find ourselves with the world, but we do not live in a culture that teaches our values or contemplative aspects of life. What reflection occurs is a pigeonholed into mutually exclusive categories. Academics examine the individual and the world, which is supposedly detached rationally, dismissing the stories of the heart as anecdotal. Therapists in the personal growth community focus on individual histories, often shying away from seeing them in a larger context of the history of the culture. the planet, or the cosmos. Those interested in spirituality reacting against the overvaluing of the empirically provable and dominance of linear thinking often focus exclusively on the intuitive and experimental, refusing to use their thinking to examine the mystical explanations being offered for experiences that seem to defy scientific explanation. To dance and to be all of who and what we are, we cannot leave any part of the self behind. It is not enough to have an experience of the unity or the solitude and refuse to use our thinking, intuitive, creating, and rational, to explore possible explanations for such experiences. It is not enough to analyze and dissect with the rational mind and leave behind what the heart knows, because the mind cannot find a niche for this knowledge in some neat, well-developed schema. It is not enough to romanticize and make infallible impulses of the body or emotions, insisting something must be good and true because I feel it. Some spiritual traditions and New Age philosophies claim that our true nature is to be found exclusively in experiences of our unity with life. They deny the reality of separation, claiming that it is only an illusion of time and space. But I live here in time and space. This is the reality I know every day, and in this reality, no two material beings can occupy the same space at the same time. We're separate. Why is this any less real than those experiences of merging with another or feeling myself a part of a vast wholeness? Conversely, some in scientific community advocate materialist philosophy that denies the reality of any experience of merging with something greater than self, reducing such experiences to the biochemical process of the brain or the delusional meandering of a wishful imagination. To dance, to step into the fray of the daily life, and to keep true to our soul's intention to live who we really are. We have to be willing to live both the reality of our separate individuality and the reality of our unity in something greater. Each day at 7 a.m., the 17 men and women attending the riding retreat assemble in a room where the windows look out over the river. I share some poetry and a prayer and lead them in meditation. The meditation is done in pairs, sitting close, facing each other, and each person turns to use their imagination to visualize a blessing for the person opposite them coming up from the earth and flowing into their own hands. Slowly they reach out and touch the head of the man or woman in front of them, imagining this blessing flowing into the person and letting their fingers touch the shape and the softness of the face before them, seeing the incredible beauty of the other. As each person receives, they open themselves to beginning their day blessed. Finishing the meditation, we wander out into the land. We watch the great blue heron fly down the river and catch a glimpse of the otter's head skimming through the water. Stand beneath the maple tree listening to the river begin its rush through the gorge until the dining room bell calls us to breakfast. The agreement we have is to be in social silence from the time we get up until our first session at 10 a.m. Each person fills a plate with food and moves to the tables in the log cabin dining room or on the porch outside. The first morning you can catch the scent of tension, and those who are not used to this, those who are unsure what will be expected of them if they are not speaking or listening to others. But by the second day, this anxiety has been dispelled. Nothing is expected. All that is asked is that each person hold the silence. The meal, the morning itself, slows down. In the silence, it's easier to be aware of each mouthful, every taste, the movement of hand to mouth, the sound of metal cutlery laid on the china plate. By the fourth morning, there is a rhythm to our hours of silence together, an easy dance of people moving through the room, shifting chairs, and no longer avoiding sitting too close or too far away, but letting the impulse to move take them to a spot that draws them. On the last morning of the retreat, I'm sitting on a porch overlooking the property and eating my ginger pancakes slowly, surrounded by 5 other women at various tables. Vivian in her blue flannel teddy bear pajamas cradles a mug of warm tea in her hands. Susie eats fruit and muffins slowly, gazing outward like a woman trying to catch a glimpse of her husband returning from the sea. Ellen, quiet with her thoughts, turned inward and breathing, just breathing. Myrna, the eldest in our group, now approaching the threshold of 60, her red hair blazing like a fire as the sun climbs higher, her long legs gracefully stretched out and painted toes relaxed and glittering in the delicate black sandals. Kat, the youngest, sits behind Myrna, curled up in her chair, writing in a journal and crying quietly. Suddenly a great sob escapes her, shaking her and shaking us all for a moment. No one moves. No one speaks. We are with her as we are with each other, and yet each of us is at the same time completely alone, with all the unspent sobs we hold inside. Cats sob in the tenderness of the morning blessing, and silence we're holding together split me open. A trickle of fear ripples through me like a small electrical shock, but it vanishes almost as quickly as it appears. There is no pain, only an almost unbearable and exquisite sensation of being fully alive. For one moment, I'm alone enough. No one to take care of, no one asking for explanations or time or movement. And I'm at the same time enough with the world, with these 5 women, and this place and this moment. The wind shakes the leaves on the quaking aspen before me, and I feel the flutter of their sound in my chest. I hear as if for the first time the wail of the trucks on the highway in the distance carrying lives away from me. And I know I'm as connected to those names who I will never learn as I am to those who share this porch with me. The rising heat of the morning sets cicadas buzzing and warms the great pine on the front lawn, sending its sweet scent to fill me. And I feel how the heat of the sun and the heat of my body are the same heat, and yet separate and distinct. The German theologian Meister Eckhart wrote, "There is nothing in all of the universe so much like God as silence." Remembering that morning at the retreat and smiling at my own audacity, I think, close, but I would say there is nothing in all the universe so much like God as shared silence. Because it is where I'm simultaneously aware of both my solitude and my deep connection with others that the experience of the sacred enters. Silence invites me to my solitude and makes me aware of my distinct and separate existence. To be aware of who and what I am, there must be a boundary to I, as both subject and object. I must be conscious that there is a place where I end. There on the surface of my skin, at the top of my head, the tips of my fingers and toes, and at a place where the other, the air around me, the chair beneath me, the hand touching mine begins. It is the awareness of separation that gives me the gift of self-reflectivity. I'm not the only I that perceives and experiences her separate existence. I am the I that is aware of the I that perceives and experiences the separation from the other. This appreciation gives me the gifts of exploring and knowing my own essential nature. When the silence is held and shared with others, I taste this essential nature, my innate ability to be fully with another. Compassion. It is our compassionate nature that makes the boundary where I end and the other begins porous, that gives me the ability to experience the other as another myself, despite the fact that we are separate, distinct individuals. In shared silence, where I'm simultaneously aware of both my solitude and deep connection with others, my awareness is open to both my own essential nature and to the knowledge that this nature is the same as that which is embodied in all else, that which is greater than the sum of the parts, the mystery, and I become aware of my participation in this wholeness, experiencing both my solitude and my unity with all that is. I know 2 things that have always been true.